So welcome everyone to today's session where we are going to be doing live packaging audits for your CPG brands. When you get your product made, a lot of times we're creating these product designs on a computer, sometimes by hand initially, and then you get them out into the world or get them online, and you learn a ton of things around how people are buying your product, how they're looking for it, and how the design, the language, the fonts, the colors all interact in the real world to help your product sell. I learned this firsthand with my product T-Squares. We thought we made this great packaging, stuck it on the shelf, and then realized that the shadow from the shelf was blocking our brand name, and people had no idea what our product was. And so it's really important to understand how your product's actually performing so they can be your main sales tool when you are not there to sell it. So to jump into this, we're going to be giving a little bit of context in the beginning for what makes high converting packaging. And then we're going to be spending the bulk of our time doing live packaging audits as well. With me today is Sanders, who is the founder of NUEX Creative. And Sanders is here to really help you understand kind of how to build better brand packaging and product design. Sanders, welcome today.
Well, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Awesome, Sanders. So if you want to jump right in, we can go through the quick overview at the beginning, and then we will open it up to the audits.
Perfect. Let's do that. So I just have a really short little deck that I put together, and then we can go into everyone's audit for the meat and potatoes. So I'm the founder of NUEX Creative. We specialize in designing winning brands and packaging that sells. It's not just about designs that look good, but we want to optimize to actually increase your sales for CPG brands, right? So we have over 5,000 successful projects completed. We've generated over $1 billion for our clients, and we're 5-star rated at Clutch and Google. We're also an award-winning design agency. We recently won the Platinum Award at the NUEX Creative Awards, as well as 2 Gold Awards and a honorable mention. So 72% of consumers say that packaging does influence your purchase decisions. Why? Well, it's your first impression, right? A lot of you are probably doing demos in stores. You're not able to do demos all the time in every store, especially if you want to expand. And the packaging is the first thing that everyone sees, right? It has to tell your brand narrative. It has to give your competitive advantage. And it is actually a repeatable science. And so if you follow some of the steps that we'll help you with, you will be able to design winning brands time and time again. And it's not just about the packaging itself. We do want to look at the entire customer journey, and I will be asking questions kind of around that. But you want to know what your environment looks like, whether that's a store or online. We also want to tackle peripheral selling, meaning that when you're walking down the aisle or even online, something that grabs your attention. Once you're looking at the shelf, you're going to be basically competing side by side with your competitors, right? And you have to be able to stand out, grab their attention with different marketing language or the design itself. And then when they look at the packaging, we want to make sure that the packaging is actually optimized to increase those sales because what you have in the packaging could make or break whether they pick your product or a competitor's product, right? And then after the sale, you also want to look at the transactional experience. Like, what is the unboxing experience? Those little minute details usually can create loyal customers or they can cost you sales, right? So kind of some key takeaways that broad overview of winning brands. They all have bold branding. They have key information, not too much information or the wrong information. They have a clear visual hierarchy, meaning what you look at the packaging in which order you look at the packaging. And obviously needs quality designs and then a unique brand experience. So a really good use case on a revamp gone wrong. And the reason that sometimes, good design does not always sell is Tropicana, right? They wanted to make it more modern, more clean, more sexy, and it completely failed. They lost $30 million doing so because sometimes it's the design, you might look good, but it might not be optimized to sell. What did they do wrong? Well, they lost their brand awareness on the packaging, making it subtle on the side. It was overly clean, right? They lost the tastiness, right? This is a food product. You should look tasty. So they actually had to revert back to their original packaging. And now all they did was change the bottle size. It's the same packaging they had before. So don't make that mistake. Hopefully we can help you there. A rebrand gone right is Olipop. They were able to, their redesign actually was able to get them to $500 million. And another competitor to them, Poppy, actually did something similar, and they recently just sold to Pepsi for, I think it was like $5 billion. One of our clients, Zaps, actually wanted to optimize their flavor, so they came up with a new energy pouch. The problem was that posed a huge risk because it already looks like a nicotine product when it's not, and it didn't look tasty. And the whole thing is they really want to have incredible flavor. They wanted to make it look more appealing and more tasty, and we were able to do that, get them more attention, make it look more flavorful. The flavors now on each packaging looks phenomenal, and they're killing it on Amazon, and they're opening a lot more stores. So this is some key takeaways that hopefully you will help you guys. We can go through that. For anyone that isn't able to do a brand audit today, you can go to nuexcreative.com/foodbevy. We're going to be giving 30% off your first project. And you can also sign up for a free brand audit for anyone that we're not able to tackle, or if you have follow-up questions afterwards, feel free. So now I'm going to switch over to the meat and the potatoes so we can dive into the packaging audits, but hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview and kind of helps a little bit there. Is there a specific order that we should be going on? Or are you going to call them out?
Yeah, let's
I
talk
think I
these
have all
all
the
together
tabs.
here. So I know Choconak Bay Foods is on the call. We're Kombucha 18 Chestnuts. So when we started Choconak Bay.
Perfect.
And then Emily, thanks for
Hello.
joining in for
Hi,
submitting.
Emily.
Hey, thanks for having me, having us.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your brand, specifically, like who is your target audience and where do you fit in pricing wise in the market? Are you higher tier, middle, like average tier, or more affordable tier?
Yeah, so Coconut Bay was formed, I mean, maybe 20 years ago or so. But then we were purchased by a private equity firm about 3 or 4 years ago. And we're working right now on a rebrand, actually.
Good
So
timing.
I really did want to look at just some of the physical packaging on these versus, the wording or things like that, because that will change. Specifically on our 3-inch, that's our best seller. If you go to our products, and I think it's under just, yep, 3-inch cheesecakes. These are
Perfect.
in the bakery section of the store, and they're
Okay.
just these little cups, a little personal size or shareable as well.
Mhm.
Cheesecake. We're, I think, pretty mid-priced. They usually retail around $3.99. It just kind of depends. But we've used this same base and dome for years.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to get some feedback on that. I have my own ideas or opinions on it. And I wanted to see what everybody else thought.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so yeah, your product looks really neat. I do like that it's open on the top. It looks pretty tasty, pretty small. This is a challenging one because it's a very small real estate, right?
Yep.
You're gonna have to pick and choose kind of what you can see and what you can't. The first thing is the brand awareness in your logo and your branding. It's pretty hidden. I think uh,
Yeah.
you're if you're just looking for like picking flavors, I think like you can definitely see the predominance on that. But I think the issue for if you're trying to build up that brand awareness where people recognize your brand and look at it, it's very subtle, it's very hidden. If you look at really top brands, I always like to do the scale. You can generally find a really big brand because you can always see the brand. And then
Yeah.
really small brands generally have really small logos. And you're almost afraid to show it. You're like, well, we're not big yet, so we don't want to advertise that. But it's
Right.
kind of like you have to lead the horse before the carriage. If you want to become a known brand, you have to design and make it recognizable, and you have to tell people like, hey, this brand is something to look out for. And that way, when people see you on the shelf, like, oh my gosh, this is a checking out Bay. I want that, right? So
Right.
um, and I think there's some things you guys can do probably around the logo that would probably need to help that, because right now, um, if that's larger, that might not be as appealing. And if I think there's some things we could probably do around the logo, but you'll probably want to have a little more brand awareness there. The color coding and everything else. I mean, it's very flavor centric, which I think is actually pretty good. Um, um, there is the gluten free on the side, but then you also have the message down below. So I might want to reorganize everything so that it has like some continuity or flow with the selling points. And then the background texture, I'm not sure if it makes or breaks it, or if it helps it, or if it makes it seem like a little old. That's
Yeah.
that's something I'm a little concerned about. Like it's missing a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of brand personality, right?
Yeah. And hopefully with the rebrand, we get all of that. That's definitely what we're looking for, is to spice it up a little bit. We've heard these look a little private label, and we don't
Yes.
want them to be that anymore. So
Yeah,
And
there's a
Lee, have you
big
started the process with a designer already?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, we have. Um, and I know you guys don't physically have one of these packages, but I don't know if you have any experience with like these plastics, and other businesses that have used this or used something else. Sometimes I think they're, especially if you have, arthritis or any type of mobility issue in your hands like that, I think they're a little tough to open.
mm,
And they're on these little pedestals. So sometimes when you try to eat it, it kind of slides off a little bit. So I wanted to see if there was maybe some um, guidance on that as well, because I would like to see it as more of an on the go snack, not necessarily always just like, not like a walking taco, but something that you could eat a lot easier.
yeah. I mean, that'll definitely help with the brand experience and the customer experiences. You definitely want to have packaging that's easy to use, especially on the go. You don't want it difficult to open. You know, a lot of the like child-proof stuff is almost adult-proof at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely look at some alternative options if you have issues with that. Also, you know, if you are looking at changing the actual physical packaging, start looking for things that maybe are unique to your brand, because
Mhm.
sometimes the materials or the shapes, like we did for Champ, we did a custom bottle shape, and that actually really elevated what the brand was and made it a unique experience with like kind of that cloud shape.
Yeah.
It makes it more recognizable, right? So if you did like a unique dome or something, then that could also stand out from maybe the generic packaging that people are already used to or they already see. Because right now, what I'm worried about is when you go to the store, like you can see this being in there, and it might look tasty, but it also might look like, you know, Safeway just pumped this out or something else. It doesn't have like
Yeah.
the uniqueness to that, right? And so
Right.
that could probably help. Another thing that stands out too is that, and this is it kind of caught my eye earlier, is you have gluten free up on the right, but then if you look down below, it says, you know, real good gluten free cheesecake. So you have redundancy there, which means it's maybe not as thought out, or it's showing that something is not as important. So maybe separate those selling points a little bit, or separate the message. You do want to probably call that out. I mean, it is gluten free and it's a dessert, and I think that's actually a really big selling point, because
Hmm.
you could easily deter people that aren't that, you know, are gluten allergen or celiac. And but then having that redundancy, that just shows like a really big flaw in the design, because you shouldn't have redundancies. Um,
Yeah, and I think the redundancy comes from wanting to keep our tagline on there. It's real good cheesecake. And so then we just put real good gluten-free cheesecake, but I totally hear what you're saying, that it's definitely on there twice.
I see, I see, I see. Yeah, that is kind of a challenging one. I mean, I would probably maybe separate it so that you have the marketing language as one, and then you have maybe the selling points as two. Besides the gluten free, is there any other selling points or different point of differentiation?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, these are older labels. We even have done a new brand since then, or a rebrand of these, and we're doing another one. But calling out some more of our attributes, all natural flavors, GMO free, real cream cheese, real butter. The thing, and maybe just some general guidance on this, it's a small label.
It's very
And so
small.
it's
Yeah.
really hard to get all those things across. And we tried our best to not make it look cluttered, but even just this
Mm,
almost looks cluttered to me. So if you have
yeah.
any pointers on especially small packaging.
So that is actually one of the challenges. So I want to give you credit. Is it is uphill battle with small labels. We've worked with a lot of small labels, and it's not easy. It's that the definition of less is more is definitely exacerbated on small packaging, right? There are a few things. One, before I forget, I these already look very tasty. how are they presented to the store? Like, is the customer actually really able to see the top unless they pick it up, or are they really just going to see basically the front before they pick it up?
It depends on how they're displayed. In the in-store bakery, they can be in kind of like an open case, like an open refrigerated case, so you can see the tops.
Mhm.
But if they're in a closed door refrigerated case, then you are seeing more just the front. We do have some special racks that actually hook on the front of the existing racks. We put a nice channel strip there, and those stand out a lot more.
Mhm.
But usually you're grabbing it from like a coffin case or something like that.
Okay. So that's where the customer journey comes in, right? Because if they can't see the top, then they can't see how tasty it is. Right.
Right.
So if you're just looking at the front, the name says pumpkin and the color looks good, but it might not be enough to really make me want to grab it. What I would actually recommend that could definitely increase your sales is having a food image on there. If you visualize, like Tropicana, I just showed you the Tropicana. That's a
Yeah.
great example. Like right now you have the second version without the orange. There's not there
Yeah.
we're missing that tastiness. We're missing like, hey, this is pumpkin cheesecake. Pumpkin cheesecake looks good. I mean, cheesecake in general looks good. It's tasty. You want to attract them like, oh, that's flavorful. If I always like to ask the question, like, if a competitor did this, what would happen? If a competitor is right next to you and they have a picture of cheesecake, if you go to the ice cream aisle, every ice cream has a picture
Mm,
of what the food is.
mm-hmm,
Why?
mm-hmm.
Because they know that if they just do the clean label, you might not pick it up compared to the competition. So if a competitor is right next to you and they have a picture of a strawberry cheesecake and then they have yours, my bet is on the competitor is gonna beat you, right?
Okay.
So let's add in some of that flavor, and then you need to restructure it. It's challenging because it's a small label, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple things, right? If you look at the visual hierarchy, let's take the chocolate truffle cheesecake. What's happening is you're grabbing, since you have the gluten-free in orange and you have the bottom strip in orange. When you have two items the same color and nothing else in matching color, it actually brings the focus to that object. It's a tactic you can use, but it's also a tactic that can hurt you. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, that's like one of the first things that you're seeing is that connection. So it's good that they see it's gluten free, but you're seeing those two, and then you're kind of hopping to the chocolate flavor, and it's kind of bouncing around. So if you restructured it with the flavor, grab the attention of what the flavor is, you can have the brand, and then you can have some selling points. Then it might be a more cohesive flow of the cognition level of when a customer is looking at that, what's grabbing their eye, what's attracting them, and then kind of narrating that path to them. It's like, hey, I got your attention with the strawberry cheesecake. It looks flavorful. Now we're going to tell you it's gluten-free, non-GMO, something, something, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you could do that with small layers. I would just kind of try to restructure and organize it a little bit. The real good cheesecake does sound good, but that's one of those things like you might want to put that to the side or deprioritize that because
Okay.
I think the flavor image is going to increase your sales more than the verbiage, right? I want to
Cool.
show them it's really good more than saying. I do usually like having verbiage like that. And there's things that we can do maybe around the logo, but since yours is so small, I would really prioritize the must-haves versus the want-haves.
Yeah, and we have a larger label for a 7-inch retail cake that's a layered cake and cheesecake. And we did put a photo on that one. So it'll be interesting to see how it does with the product photo.
Awesome. Emily, thanks so much for sharing this. Sanders, thanks for your
Thank
tips.
you. Yeah,
Let's
thank you
jump
guys.
to the next one so we can get through as many as possible. How about we go to Warrior Kombucha and Basant?
Okay, and that's the screenshot, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Hi,
Yeah.
Basant. Are you able to join us up here?
Yes, hello.
Hi,
Thank
have
you
a
so
son.
much for this. I really appreciate
Yeah.
your feedback.
So, okay, so you have a kombucha drink, which is very popular right now. There's a lot of kombucha drinks. So where do you, who is the target audience? Which price point are you fitting in? And what is your point of differentiation of your kombucha versus what's on the market?
So right off the bat is the taste. We have only mocktail flavors, and we don't taste like your typical vinegary kombucha. And it's also lightly caffeinated with indigenous tea, hence the indigenous packaging.
Mm-hmm.
Price points are actually quite competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a little bit higher, and like it sits anywhere from 349 to 399, which is quite um, in the middle of all the kombuchas that are being sold.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. Yeah.
yeah, so
I buy kombucha, so yeah, that sounds
yeah,
about right. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a 12-ounce can.
Okay.
And so our target audience is actually younger, that's looking for more than just a kombucha. They want that's something that would just energize them. And also that is kind of fluid in the sense that you could actually drink this as a mocktail. So
Mm-hmm.
we have some customers, food service customers that, have us on the menu, or some bars that's a mocktail option.
So there's a couple questions I have. Since it is mocktail, is your target audience a lot of people that are going to be at social gatherings and they need an alternative to the cocktail, kind of what, like Liquid Death did, or Perrier, on how Perrier was able to tackle, like, come into the US market? In case people don't know, Perrier couldn't tackle, it's huge in Europe, didn't really do well in America. And what they did is they actually started targeting ads for designated drivers at bars, that if you're at a bar, you can drink Puree, right? So is that kind of more than the line of it, or is it more people that are traditionally drinking kombucha and wanting a little bit of energy? Because those are two different target audiences, and I just want to get clarity.
Yes, yes, that's true. It's more of I would say a lighter version of kombucha. So grocery stores like to put us in their kombucha section.
Okay.
Then this is just a little more fun presentation that you can, but we haven't actually just targeted NA. We haven't done that. We just wanted to make kombucha more approachable and
Mhm.
fun and tastier, actually.
So those are
Someone can drink this.
the brand narrative is a little competing there, right? Because like the mocktail arena is a very specific kind of demographic to some extent, and I think
Hmm.
putting it
Hmm.
like flavoring it as a mocktail, I think is fun, but calling it necessarily a mocktail might be hurting that, where it looks more like a mocktail versus a competitor of kombucha. Like if you're in the kombucha aisle, they might
Oh,
think
I
it's more of
see.
a mocktail versus like a kombucha you could drink every day. That's
Right,
the reason I'm asking that question, is I'm a little
right,
concerned with like what the brand narrative is on that. So that's something that I would consider or think about. Mocktail flavors in general are actually very popular, but a lot of times they put it as the name, right? Like you don't have to say the word mocktail, you could say key and lime margarita, and that already implies it's a mocktail flavor, but it keeps it that fun, but it's a little more inclusive, if that makes sense.
right,
There's
right.
already a lot of brands that do that, where they'll have like a mojito flavor and you know that it's a mocktail, but then it's like a bonus, but not necessarily an exclusion, right?
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
my only concern there is that by labeling it the mocktail, you might be bottlenecking what you are and hurting out some
Okay.
of those wider sales. So that's something I would circle back around, because we want to make sure that we are not missing out on any of the market. Because naming it the raspberry mojito will already do that. I don't think you necessarily have to say the mocktail. I think you probably could increase your sales just by having that flavor, because they'll know that and it's kind of fun, right? And it's
Right.
also a current trend right now that some people are doing. The other thing too is you said that it has light caffeination, but I'm not seeing anything on the packaging that actually says that it has some caffeine in there.
Oh, so it's by the ingredients, it does mention the amount of caffeine. I know it's hard to see
Yeah, but
this.
that if that is part of a selling point, then you would, like, if I asked what some of the differentiations are, and that was one of the first things you said, and it's not there. So the customer, if you don't show it, the customer is not going to know.
Hmm.
They might pick it up and turn it, but we want to make sure that from the customer journey, we're kind of saying that before, we're attracting them before, because what if they don't pick it up and they don't look at it and they don't know it's caffeinated?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that's a selling point and you want to promote it, then I would say make sure to promote it. If you read the book, Build a Story Brand, they say you have to state the obvious. If you don't tell people, they're not going to assume. The packaging overall, I think, is actually really fun. There's a couple things that you can do that might make it more flavorful. Is if you ever take a traditional painting class, the first thing that they'll do, and in Disney and Pixar actually follow this really, really heavily, is they'll actually make you pick up your black paints and throw them away. And it's because they know that black actually muddies down colors and it doesn't make it as vibrant or tasty. You can use black very strategically to create really cool contrast, edginess, neutrality, or even a premium look, right? But if you want to be more flavorful, that's an area where maybe we can change out the black for like a really dark color, a dark flavor color, right? And it'll you sometimes you can even do it where it tricks the eye, it looks black, but it'll actually increase the vibrance of the entire aesthetic. The other thing too is like you have a lot of white, which is really good if for conveying purity, cleanliness, almost medicinal, right?
Right.
So, but if your brand you said has incredible flavors, I would almost want to avoid that tactic. I would want it to make it look really flavorful. And one way to do that is to probably add more color to your packaging than having it pure white, because then right now you're conveying more of a purity and a cleansiness and a medicinal look to it. And we really want to boost the flavor. And one way to do that is by color, right? They've done blind tests where they've given the same food to people, blindfolded and non-blindfolded. And every time they looked at it and it looked more colorful, they actually said the food was tastier, even though it was the exact same food. Or they've done tests where they've changed the colors on things. And in design, we manipulate the subconscious, right?
Right.
So one way to do that to make that look more flavorful is I think adding in some of that color and kind of boosting that vibrance. You want to make it look as tasty as you say it is. And I think right now it's kind of missing that a little bit. Otherwise, I think that the experience is neat. You know, it's the indigenous Yapan tea. You have some of that style. I think the brand experience direction is definitely in line because you have the little repeating shapes. There's continuity in that. It's fun. It seems a little like Western, right?
Yes.
And I do like that you have no vinegary taste. That's something that, like, just like the caffeine might be more of a selling point. So we might want to promote that heavier than make it more subtle. That could actually probably help, especially for people that don't like kombucha, right?
Right.
Kombucha, as you know, and we all know, is polarizing. People either love it or hate it.
Right.
So if the fact that you say it doesn't taste like that, it has major flavor, I almost want to call that out. And you can even probably put it as a call out, right? And sometimes call outs can break the designs. And that's where it comes down to some of the use cases I showed where great design doesn't always outsell. Sometimes you have to break the design and it'll increase the conversions, right?
True. Like we sell more when we do demos because people are so surprised that it doesn't taste like your typical vinegary kombucha. You know, they'll say, "Are you sure it's not a real margarita?"
Hey, Vasant,
Yeah.
that kind of brings up an interesting question. Have you done other like demos or consumer research to identify like what the key reason people are buying yours are? Like when you're doing the demos, are they buying it because they can drink it as a mocktail?
Yeah, actually, people get really excited that it's a mocktail kombucha,
Mm.
mocktail flavored kombucha. I've
Are they
considered,
excited that it's a kombucha or that it's a mocktail?
that's a great question, Jordan.
I'm gonna dive
Um,
into that.
I think it's both because people are intrigued that they haven't heard anything like this, right? So they're like, what? Mocktail? And it's kombucha. Oh my gosh, let me try. And they're like, whoa, it doesn't taste like anything I expected.
And I
Um,
ask because it brings to mind an experience that I had with T Squares where I
yeah.
was doing a demo once and in Whole Foods and a customer came by and they're like, "Hey, I saw this product on the shelf," and we were selling bite-sized energy bars from my
Hmm.
T Squares business. And she
Right,
said, "I thought it looked interesting on the shelf, but I wasn't sure what it was, so I didn't buy it."
right.
And when I tasted it, she was like, "Oh, this is really good." But the packet, our selling proposition was really confusing because I can tell you, like for our product, we labeled it a tea infused energy snack, and
Hmm.
zero people go into the store looking for a tea infused energy snack. And so it
True.
really confused people because they weren't really sure what it was, even though it was unique. And when looking at your cans, I think it's really cool because people like go in looking for kombucha and people go in
Hmm.
looking for mocktails. I think like really flavorful things. And I wonder the overlap between people looking for a kombucha mocktail with Yaopan tea. And if that is too many messages, if that's differentiating you, if you would test like one or two, both of those as like the core message and see how the response differs to make it really clean. So when people see it, they know like, oh, this is exactly what I'm getting from it.
Right, right. No, we are actually in the market for refreshing the branding and the actually creating the brand identity. So this was a perfect time to get this notice for this webinar. Yeah, so we do need a little more, like you mentioned, I think it's we don't have to say mocktail, just say lychee mimosa. It's already understood.
Well, I mean, so that was the question I had in the beginning, was which market, and I think Jordan's coming back to that same question is we're really trying to understand, not necessarily solution it, we're trying to understand what is that
Right.
market and where does your product fit? Because if it, like, to that point, if it is something that is super heavy, like that is your market angle is mocktails, then we do want to promote it. But if it's being standoffish or excluding customers, then we might want to just do it, like leverage that in the flavor. Another option too is that you right now have mocktail and then you have the flavor, but if you focus on the flavor, you can have a subtle secondary information underneath, like a description of what it is, or even a bolder description of what it is, like non-vinegary mocktail or kombucha
Hmm.
mocktail or something, right? So
Right.
I think one of the takeaways is that you have these selling points that you're not leveraging, which is like the non-vinegary kombucha taste, which is huge. You have the caffeine boost, which is not promoted anywhere on the front real estate, which means it's not going to be seen unless they pick it up, which means it's not going to be seen, right, to some extent. Um, so we need to find a way to tell that narrative to the customers that you could build the use case that it is a mocktail, either with the flavor name itself or the description, but you also need to build that in that narrative that this is a non-vinegary tasting kombucha that you can use as a mocktail or on the go just for fun, right?
Right.
That's what we need to build into that narrative for your brand, because you're not going to be there to demo, you're not going to be able to tell them how tasty it is. Your packaging has to say that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that
Uh,
feedback and for sharing your packaging.
Thanks,
yeah. Thank
Mazam.
you, Sanders. We'll definitely be talking.
Sounds good.
All right, so next up we have Jeff with Dry Brew.
Nice. All right. Should I go to the products page or this one? I think that was the link that I had.
Yeah, you can go to the product page.
Okay, perfect. So you got some coffee chews. They seem pretty cool.
Yeah, it's basically a 6-ounce cup of coffee in chewable form.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crossover market. I mean, it's coffee is the selling point, obviously, but
Mhm.
it is also an energy chew. But our
Mhm.
product is unique in that, we're not a coffee flavored candy. We're actually coffee that you can chew. So,
Oh, wait, so you're saying it's not just energy in a chew.
it's
So what is
actual coffee.
what is the material? How you make, like, just to give the rest of us kind of an
Look
understanding.
here, I'll open one for you. It looks like a Tootsie Roll,
Mhm.
but I know that the lighting's not great here, but it's just a little chew that looks like a
Okay.
Tootsie Roll, but it's not chocolate. It tastes like coffee. It has, a little bit of cream in it.
Okay.
So it is sweetened, but there's no sugar.
What are the other
Um,
ingredients besides the coffee?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
What are the other ingredients besides the coffee?
There is non-dairy creamer in it.
Okay.
Um,
Is there like a gelatin or something that holds
Like a
the
gum or
shape?
something.
no, no,
So
it's a, it is,
how do you bind the powdery coffee?
it's a patented formula. So
Okay. He's not gonna tell us.
let's leave it at that. Yes. Um, but so so as far as the packaging goes, there are important key things we want to convey. We do want to convey that there is, first of all, that it is coffee that you can eat.
Hmm.
But also, we do want to be transparent that there is creamer, non-dairy creamer in it.
Yeah.
Um, and if you see the back, you can see the back of the packaging too. There's some messaging here that again reiterates that there is non-dairy creamer in there, and the caffeine content, which is 65 milligrams.
Do you have photos of the back of the packaging on?
We don't, not on the website, but I could. Oh,
Is this the
actually,
back
we
of
do.
it, or
We
is
do
this
actually.
changed?
No, that is actually. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's loading a little slow.
I mean, we wanted to just keep the design very, very simple. Obviously, there's not a lot of bells and whistles here. As I said, there is a lot of messaging on it because it is a unique product, and I think most people, when we first explain to them, assume, like I said earlier, that it is a candy. And then when you look at it, right? Yeah, when you look at it, it looks like a Tootsie Roll. And so when we do pop-ups and we hand out samples, we want to stress to people before they bite it, don't, make sure your palate's not anticipating biting into dark chocolate, because that's not what this is. It's actual coffee. And we've been pleased to find that people that, whether they take their coffee black or with cream, which I do, I take coffee with probably too much cream. It satisfies, the palates of the black coffee drinkers and those of us who like sweetened coffee.
Okay.
Coffee flavor definitely wins out, but it's not bitter. So, we've been careful with the wording. Like, some people confuse when we say coffee chews, they think then it's like dip, which there actually is a product out there that is you can get that's actually like coffee flavored dip, which is wild.
Yeah, Zaps that I just showed was one of our clients, and that's basically what it is. It looks like a nicotine pouch. You just put it in there, you suck on flavor, and then
But this is actually like there is a product out there that is actually like, like a can of
like the actual raw
dip.
chew.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
wow.
you just actually put it. There's no pouch. We really like the simplicity of the logo, and we just kind of built the packaging around that simplicity with I would say probably more messaging than products typically have, but I feel like it's all necessary, just to convey what it actually is.
And then the two lightning bolts represents the double shot, right?
Yes, that's our turbo double shot.
And did the other ones just have like a one lightning bolt, or no?
No, here's I think that was torn. Let me see if you go. I have one here that's just like, they're on the website. So yeah, so the one in the middle is just regular, and then there's decaf as the green stripe.
Okay.
We don't have other flavors at the moment.
So I think one of the biggest things is, and kind of case in point is, I think one of the biggest hurdles right now is the narrative. Like right now, even showing us the packaging, you had to spend a few minutes to kind of explain this to all of us, right? And if you're not there to demo, the packaging needs to do that. So coffee in a bite, I don't think describes it well enough, right? I think there needs to be a little more narrative of exactly kind of what it is, so people understand that without you being there to explain that. The other thing is kind of the visual hierarchy. You have the drybrew.com, and then the 3 chews at the bottom. I think there's some information that could probably just be removed to the back, like the website. You could put that with the QR code. The US patented formula. I would try to put some of the selling points more cohesively together, because right now it's a lot of information that might be competing with itself. It might help to show what the product looks like. I think I'm sure some of your customers are probably asked about that. I mean, you were showing us what it looked like. Some customers are going to have that natural question, like, this is a new product. So one of the biggest hurdles you have is like the education barrier, right? You have a new type of product. And Jordan's familiar with this with the T-squares, is like one of the biggest hurdles you have is the education barrier. You have to educate them first on what the product is before you can even convince them to start trying it or selling it, right? Or buying it.
Yeah, right.
Having like a 3D render image of what the chews look like, I think might help you a little bit. I think some consumers are probably going to be asking what that looks like anyways. I think the black is edgy. It's edgy for coffee. It's simple. It's minimalistic. we might grab more attention with some contrast. Like the yellow strips right now are, I think, are probably grabbing the most attention on these, but then you kind of lose that on the middle, right? Because if it's just black, then it might not grab enough attention, especially against some of the competition that might be more vibrant, or having contrast, for example, is a good way to grab attention as well. So let's see, 2 espresso shots and a single by 3 individual coffee chews. So like the 3 like I would definitely look at the visual hierarchy too and start prioritizing. What are the top 3 things that the customer needs to look at and see and identify that will make your sales, and then everything else becomes a little bit secondary. The 3 individual chews could probably be secondary. You already have that down here. I would have, the 3 chews or how much is in the packaging. 1, so it's compliant. 2, so customers have clear expectations of what they're purchasing. But you might not need that as like the big first thing they see, right? That's maybe we tell them a little bit more of what it is, or a little bit more of what your product differentiation is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do like the illustrations, the one by equals 2 cups of coffee. I think that's good. People naturally look at shapes and colors before they read text. We've just been ingrained from it for a survival tactic, right? If you're in the woods, you want to make sure you see a jaguar in the forest, or the jungle, lurking before you can like read some signs, right? So that grabs attention pretty well in very clear state. Same with the selling points that are below that. The US patented formula, maybe put that to kind of together. So just to clean it up a little bit, because right now there's just a lot going on. We want like a 3, right?
So you'd say don't lose US patent formula, but just combine it on the same line in some way with the.
I mean, to be honest, the patented formula is not. You always want to go to the end user, the customer.
Yeah.
From a business stance, that's nice. You have a patented formula. From a customer stance,
right?
They might not care. Like, if I'm going to pick up the US patented formula coffee, is that like the US patented formula? Is that why people buy coffee?
No.
So then I would remove it, put it to the back if needed. But the front should only speak to the customer. Like no one's going to pick up coffee and be like, well, this one's US patented, I'm going to buy this coffee over that coffee, right? They're looking for flavor. They're looking for energy. They're looking for experience. You right now have that brand experience. You have basically coffee on the go. Like you can start building in, whether this is probably more on the back of the packaging, but if you do it very strategically and very concisely, you could build in use cases, right? Use cases are a fantastic way to sell a product, especially if you have an education barrier, right? So you have a new product. One of those education barriers is like, okay, well, what is the product and how do I use it? Well, you can tackle how do I use it by building use cases. It's on the go. Like when we did Zaps, we started advertising marketing specifically to the case studies. We started doing product landing pages that actually spoke to, hey, if you're at a baseball game and you don't want to grab coffee, like you can grab this. If you're in a board meeting and you can't grab something, like you can do this. If you're in church and you don't want to sit there and drink coffee, or somewhere where you literally aren't supposed to be drinking a fluid, that is the use case for something like this, right? So you can start identifying those, and you can do those very, very cleanly. You can have little icons, almost, similar to the cup icons, where it's like, hey, if you're on a plane or whatever location, X, Y, and Z, now you can take that coffee to go. Now you've given them a reason to purchase and a reason to use it, and also educated them how they can use it, right? And so at least that tackles one of those barriers and increases, it gives them a reason to purchase.
No, that makes sense. That's a great note.
Jeff, are you familiar with Awake caffeinated chocolates?
I'm not.
I put the link in the chat
there's a good chance that I've
you've probably seen them around
so
like,
many
the
of
store.
these, but
it's
the names not
it's
jumping out at
different
me.
from what you do, but they're selling energy on the go, right? They're selling, essentially they use like a chocolate that has caffeine in there. I think it's from coffee, but just
I have seen
like
these.
like how they're
I
it,
recognize the owl.
like making it fun. They have pictures highlighting their product, which is Yeah, like yours can either is probably look more like a Tootsie Roll than chocolate, but there's ways of like how do you make chocolate look appetizing
Uh,
visually? How do you make it fun? What are the key selling points? Like for them, it's interesting. They actually realize that people want an excuse to eat chocolate. And their excuse is like, oh, this gives me a little bit of caffeine, right? So there's an excuse
yeah.
to do it. With your product, it might be like coffee on the go, but how do you visually show and make it fun for someone to have like a little bite of coffee on the go and telling a story around that? And then how does the packaging and how does the product fit in with that, with flavors, with everything else? Like, are people looking for just like straight black coffee bites? Maybe they are. And like, how do you make
Hmm.
that look really tasty and appealing still? Because
Mhm.
I think people are going to want that taste appeal first and fun to like have this with them.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's an edible, so you actually have to follow the market strategy for edibles, and edibles is very different from coffee. Like you have that black approach,
Hmm.
like very much like Rifle Company kind of coffee vibes, right? Which works for
Hmm.
coffee, but to Jordan's point, if it's a chewable, it's an edible. And I always say follow anything that's edible, you need to follow the candy tactic, right? Candy brands
Hmm.
know how to make things look very impulsive buy because they make it bright colored, vibrant, tasty looking, and it's more impulsive, right? Right now,
Yep.
this is a chewable more than a coffee brand, so we need to focus on that tactic. Having the black is not going to look tasty. It's just going to look edgy. It's going to look coffee, but compared to like a Wake, for example, or a competitor, if they look at a chewable and theirs looks more tasty than yours, they're going to go with the competition,
Hmm. Right.
right?
Um, yeah, I think for us, it's always been like as trying to walk that fine line of differentiating ourselves from the candy flavored. I'm sorry, the caffeinated candies and different like caffeinated chews that there are out there, and lean more into the coffee. But
But you could still
we
lean
should
into the
probably
coffee though, right?
and
Because some people love coffee stuff. They love
yeah,
coffee flavor. And so I think there's a middle ground where you can still make it look tasty, but also appeal to that. Maybe
yeah.
maximize and leverage what your brand is, maybe not always have to try to change what it's not, right? So if it is for coffee lovers,
Hmm.
advertise, that's who you should be marketing. You don't always go after the target audience. If yours is actual coffee lovers versus candy lovers, and that's what it is, then market to them. It needs to be marketed specifically to coffee lovers. Like this is something that they're going to love. It's going to taste like coffee. And I think showing that Tootsie Roll look will kind of help set expectations of what it is. And then
Uh-huh.
you can still maximize it and leverage it as coffee flavored, but you still need to leverage, I think, some of the flavor since it is an edible and it's a chewable, right?
I just
Yep.
put the link in the comments as well to an guide that I wrote about how to understand category norms and differentiate. So take a look at this, but it's b basically when you're introducing someone something new and innovative like yours, if
Hmm.
there's two, three, 4 points of differentiation from the category, it's going to be very confusing for customers to the point where they like won't buy versus
Hmm.
understanding what Sanders said. If you make it look like the category and then your one differentiator of being like real coffee and the bar, it really stands out to everything else instead of having to make them look at 5 different selling points and decide which one's more important. And so I made that mistake. I say that because like I failed with that with T squares. We made it too different from the category and our sales
Hmm.
tanked because of it.
And you made it too different from
We were
tea
selling an energy
products.
bar basically, but instead of selling an energy bar, we used there's caffeine from green tea. We
Uh-huh.
had bite-sized squares instead of a single serve bar. It was a multi-serve pouch, and our flavor or our they're like these crunchy things and like new ingredients. And so we were selling people on too much. And I told the story earlier. They're like, "Oh, it looks interesting, but I don't get it." So they walked
Yeah.
away. They didn't
Right.
sit there and figure out what it was. They just left and didn't buy.
Yeah. I
Gotcha.
mean, that's a great example. And Jordan went through that hurdle, right? One of the biggest, most expensive hurdles you have is education barrier because you have to educate. But also, if you have a novel product, Apple does a really good job of making novel products where it's almost unique. It creates a new market. But that's also very, very challenging to create a novel product because you have to educate. So if you do more of what's called a tipping point product, meaning it's normal, people know what it is, but it's slightly better than what exists, then that approach can help you. So I think that's where Jordan's coming from, is that you want to make this more of a tipping point product, compete with it's a chewable, but say why it's different, say why it's better, versus advertising it completely different. And then you have to have that education barrier. So a good example of this is Poppy. When they came in, they were a prebiotic soda, but if they had advertised as a prebiotic soda, they probably would have never sold to Pepsi. They probably would have honestly just died. But what they did is they were smart and they said, okay, well, we want to compete against Pepsi, and we want to say this is a soda alternative. And so what they did is the big call out was the 5 grams of sugar. And now Olipop even did a better job. I think they have a bigger call out, and it's 2 grams of sugar. But they are calling it out as, hey, this is competing tipping point. It's soda, but it's slightly different than soda. Here's why: the sugar. And then when you look closer, you realize it's a prebiotic soda, but that's almost secondary. Right? Yep. It's not the big call out. And so you have to do that same approach, is come from it's a coffee chew, and then state the differentiation versus come at it from a completely novel stance, because then you're going to have that education barrier. And that's a good way. You can still educate, but do it secondary, and then you mitigate the risk a little bit.
That makes sense. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Jeff, thanks for sharing, and Sanders, thanks for
thank you.
Feedback.
Thanks, Jeff.
We only have 5 minutes left. I think we got through everyone who was here that mentioned, but anyone that we didn't get to, if you are interested in getting a review, reach out to me. I'll connect you with Sanders to grab time, because he's happy to take an individual look. And anyone on the call who found value in this as well, if you want to book some one-on-one time with Sanders as well, please do so, because then you'll be able to get more personalized feedback and understand how to design your packaging for your brand. But Sanders, thanks for being on and sharing all this great feedback.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for joining and participating. I love it. And then you can go to nuexcreative.com/foodbevy to book a call for any follow-up or further questions you have.
I just put the link in the chat, so you can go ahead and get set up there. So do that. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks, Jordan. Jordan, did you say you're going to send a recording of this?
Yes, I'll be sending out a recording tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for arranging this. Thanks, Sander. Looking forward to connecting with you later.
Looking forward to it.
Bye.